For the first time in history, more than 50% of the world's population will live in cities.
We need to be more efficient at how we deliver services. We need to be better at getting people from A to B.
When you look at what makes up a city, certainly it's really about the people.
You know, our city has to support a consumer who expects and demands services now at the touch of a button.
Hacemos una apuesta para lo que llamamos las ciudades inteligentes.
People need information, people need access, they need data, and the government actually needs the same thing.
那么我们的愿望啊，就是实现在硬海这样一个转变。
It is a fabulous opportunity that can be a global network of young change agents driving the future.
These partnerships bring all of the expertise from the outside, paired with what we know and best understand about how the government works on the inside, all with the design of making sure that we give our citizens the highest quality service at the lowest possible cost.
Barcelona quiere ser un referente de las nuevas tecnologías puestas al servicio de las personas.
Every one of us has something to learn from the other. You don't always have to be sitting right next to someone to share an idea.
We are going to learn from other global cities and from leading technology providers how best we're going to tackle the challenges for the future.
我们呢，就特别看重和微软这样的世界的信息产业的领军企业进行合作。
The opportunities for the future through technology, I think, are virtually limitless.
Welcome to the final session. So this session we are going to discuss, I believe that you saw that beautiful video from Microsoft, how the technology has enabled city governments as well as citizens. So the purpose of this this session is to understand the role technology can play in enhancing the city experience of citizens, and also how to hold government, city governance accountable, transparent, and also make them productive. So we have three presentations. First presentation by Dr. Bhattacharya. Dr. Bhattacharya has been advisor to government of Sri Lanka, and as well as he's one of those smart city boys of Premier Prime Minister Modi, involved in the smart city project of India. And we have Ravi. Ravi has extensive experience in Cisco consulting, and then we have Ravinesh Peter from ICTA, who will discuss about government policy and what is the government initiatives in terms of enabling public sector, city governance, etc. With technology. And we also have Vivek. Vivek is from public sector, head of public sector of Microsoft Asia Pacific, and he will also discuss with us some interesting case studies. And the session is chaired by Rohan Javira, who has extensive experience in technology as well as digital space. So it's a final session, and please welcome our speakers. Rohan?
Thank you very much. Not the most exciting welcome. Could we have another round up? Clap it up, please. Thank you. We are going to be here till 8 o'clock. So thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be invited to be a session chair for LBR LBO session. I wouldn't take too long. I think Lakshman always tells me the importance of this session is the content and the richness and the relevancy of the content. So we have time till about 5:30. We have probably the most sophisticated and comprehensive set of panelists in this session to talk about technology around building a smart and connected city. So we'll get to that. But Dr. Jayajit, I would like to invite you for the presentation. And then we'll invite the three speakers, keynote speakers, to go through their presentations, and then we will be moving on to the panel discussion. Feel free to send me any questions that you would like to ask, and etc. I also have some interesting questions. Arunesh represents ICTA. That's never a dull day when ICTA is in your panel. So, Dr. Jayajit, may I invite you?
I think one of the things that was being mentioned is that I'm also a professor. So I'll start with a little quiz. How do you think we can use cloud computing in smart cities? Anyone? Is there any use of cloud computing in smart cities? No, none? Nobody wants to hazard a guess? There you go, it's a useless technology. Drones? How about drones? Can we use drones for smart cities? Yes? I heard a yes, hand going up, ma'am. How do we use drones for smart cities? Sorry? You don't have to worry. You can pick up the humans and position them somewhere else. Yeah, right. What's wrong with these questions? Yeah, there's another hand going. Yeah, please. Right, right. So at least the trucks can be let off and you can have the cargoes picked up by... No, but you're right. Yeah, it can be part of the supply chain. But what's wrong with the questions is that what I'm asking you is that I've got a technology, please find the problem. Right, which is why when I asked you cloud, there's a complete blank. And the problem is not yours, the problem is mine. I'm asking you the wrong question. You can't start a conversation on smart city by saying, I have these technologies, now let's see what we can push into Colombo. It has to always start with the other way around, which is what has been discussed since last evening. Let's first find what the problems are, and then see what kind of technologies, what kind of ICT solutions can best fit into that. Now let's look at what are the problems and why smart cities, and especially from a South Asian perspective. The first picture, we keep benchmarking ourselves with Singapore. What I've put over here, is the presentation visible? Okay, don't worry, those are technological glitches. When Singapore was being built, where did the construction workers come from? And I see a few Singaporeans over here. They came from Bangladesh and from Malaysia and from Indonesia, am I right? They came from all the neighboring countries, mostly. And therefore, once a nice city was built, they went back. After every single building is built, they go back. Imagine Colombo building up its shiny buildings. Do you think the people who come in from the back of beyond in Sri Lanka and they come down to Colombo to build a building, will they go back? They'll be part of those 66,000 people who are being rehabilitated right now. Those will be rehabilitated into new housing complexes. Another set of 66,000 will come in and they will stay put. So in the seeds, in the root of your construction of your city, you will sow the seeds of its destruction. And these are issues which are quite unique to South Asia. If we go to China as an example, they also built up very nice cities. But they've got a system called the Hukou system, by which anyone who does not have, quote unquote, the work permit to stay in the city will not even get grains. Forget about anything else. So they have to go back to the villages from where they came. So managing migrant workers' population becomes a challenge. And let me just take a small example of what the solution could be as we move forward, and why am I painting these problems as of now, is that if you're having migrant workers' population coming in, you need to have systems and processes to keep track of them, to keep track of their children. Are they lying on the side of the road while their parents are doing construction, or are they getting educated? Will they be part of the unskilled, uneducated labor force of Sri Lanka in future, which will become completely redundant because robotics and automation will be taking over the future unskilled labor force? Or will they be part of an educated workforce which will then be able to contribute much more significantly to the Sri Lankan GDP? And the problem starts here. If we don't have a system to manage the migrant population, they're getting uprooted from their rural roots, and they are being forced to stay in squalor in an urban setup where they don't know how to cope up. And we need to bring in the support systems enabled by technology to make sure that they are part of the productive workforce in future, that the healthcare is taken care of, and that they are contributing disproportionately more to the economy. Moving forward, and I'll go a little faster now. Half the population of this country obviously is women, and it should actually be more than half because women live longer. But are they part of, is half the population of the working population women? Probably not, which is a symptom of entire South Asia. And they're not because the infrastructure needed doesn't exist. A simple thing, do we have creches in place? Can children be left behind in creches which are appropriate? And therefore, women can go ahead and work. And therefore, the women infrastructure is in place. And that's just one example of women's infrastructure. Now, many people will come back and say, yes, we have a little, something where there's some toys lying there and somebody looks after the kids, so we have a creche. Is that creche good enough? Is there a video camera which records everything in the creche in a non-reputable server kept in a police station where the recordings can be upheld in the court of law as permissible proof? If that's not there, then just putting up a creche is of no use because there's no trust in that creche. And therefore, each of these requirements starts getting translated to some technological requirement. Many of them may or may not exist. Many of them may not exist, which is where it ties back to the conversation that was happening last evening, that what is the need and where is the innovation required, and therefore, what kind of Sri Lankan industries can be created around those requirements. And therefore, if you are able to find out what the unique requirements are, then you can come out with a unique industry that you can create, which can then be exported to the rest of the world, just like the Swedes are doing with all the unique stuff that they've done in Stockholm. They're therefore exporting it to the rest of the world. You have a complete vacuum-based system in Sweden, which takes care of all the waste. And it's a brilliant system, and it's getting exported to the rest of the world because they found the problem and they solved it. Similarly, what needs to be done is you need to find the problems in Colombo for the people of Sri Lanka and then solve them. And that becomes the next set of industries over here. Similarly, affordable housing. Do we have a system to find out who are taking up those affordable housing? Where are they staying? If they move into an affordable housing, are they selling it off? What stops them from selling it off and going back to the squalor because they'll get a lot of money in their pocket? How do we track that entire process? Lifestyle infrastructure. Imagine having a world-class city in Colombo and you got a temple or a church or something in front of a BPO operations, and the bell goes ringing at 12 in the afternoon when the peak operations is going on. You cannot have that. Can you stop people from coming on the streets and celebrating the festivals that they have? You can't. So can we therefore plan the city in such a way that these infrastructures are taken care of, that festivals on the streets are marked in certain places, and therefore we can also put in cameras, and I'm just connecting it to the need of the session, which is ICT, which keeps track of the crowd that's coming in, so you know where there's a potential stampede that can happen, and also connects back to your television or your internet, where the common citizens can see where to go and where not to go because crowd is getting built up. Similarly, security. Can we have systems in place which are protocols built up by the government, published to the people so that your phones can therefore start talking to the police when you have an issue? Right now, you've got dozens of solutions for security built on phones, but all that they do is they tell your friends that you're in trouble. And then you are in trouble and they'll know you're in trouble. Then the trouble is over and you're in a bad shape and they know you're in a bad shape. Nothing has got mitigated. Can we have real systems in place which connects to the police system, which talks to the police, and therefore the nearest law enforcement officer can come in and help you out? Infrastructure for elderly. I have not heard that conversation at all. Elderly is a very important part of our society. Unfortunately, they are old and they're not able to come to conferences and talk about the issues. But as a humane society, as a world-class global city that we are aspiring to be in Colombo, let's look at what is it that we need to provide to them. Or are they a liability? Can we use them as an asset? Many of the senior citizens come in with tremendous amount of knowledge. Can the senior citizens, for example, go out and adopt a child, adopt in the sense mentor them for the next 12 years, take care of their requirements, guide them, or perhaps work with the city and give and share their knowledge, create a volunteer system, which is beyond all the hard infrastructure that we're talking about. Similarly, transportation. The last picture that I put in is from the far western part of Nepal. As you know, the far western part of Nepal is the least developed part of Nepal. Nepal itself is the least developed country. How have they used technology? So if you see that light, it's a 5-volt light. It connects to a solar panel. So what's great about it? What's great about it is that the entire electrical system in that hut is 5-volt system. So they have taken a solar panel which pumps in electricity into a battery. Then they don't waste capital in trying to put up the electronics needed to pump it back to 220 volts and 50 hertz, because that's a waste of electronics. Right from the battery, they take a 5-volt connection out and connects it to the entire house. And that saves a huge amount of money. And if they can do it in the least developed part of a least developed country, why are we not adopting these solutions that have been created in this part of the world? And I think those are some of the issues that we should be looking at as we move forward. At the end of the day, when we look at smart city, the 2 key things that we're trying to achieve out of the smart city is that it needs to be an economically efficient city. And therefore, all systems and processes that we're talking about is aligned towards it. So some of the projects may not be financially viable. And I can take examples of projects which are not financially viable, but were eventually passed off. But they will be economically viable. And the point is that they will create economic spaces where industries can grow, people will get jobs, and therefore there will be larger taxpayer money coming in. And therefore, one way or the other, it gets financed back. And therefore, we need to look at the economic return on investments and not merely the financial return on investments. The second part is ease of living. Why is ease of living important for cities? Not just because we are, people who are staying in a hotel and therefore we need a nice life outside, but because the cities are the engines of growth. And they cater to the secondary and tertiary industries which are driven by people. And therefore, if we need to have the raw materials for these industries to be in place, these raw materials, which are human beings, need a good place to live in, which is where ease of living becomes extremely important. And therefore, all the projects that we're looking at needs to be filtered through these lenses before we start adopting them. And therefore, as an example, if you look at the second phase of high-speed rail in UK, it was financially extremely unviable. And I'm linking it back to one of the previous sessions on transportation, that some of the projects may be financially unviable. But when we went in and we started looking at the impact it will have on the economy and the valuation on the impact corridor, which also can be monetized, it turned out that it will have a 1.3 billion pound of impact every year from the 6th year of its operation onwards. And that report was tabled in the UK Parliament, and based on that report, they allowed the second phase of high-speed rail in UK to be passed, because on its own, most of these projects are unviable. Financially, most of these high-speed rail projects are unviable. In some cases, they don't make sense. In some cases, they do make sense. So what are smart cities? The radically modified city administration. How often are we reaching out to the citizens to ask, do you really want it? And let me give an example. And I've been talking about it to a few people I've been talking here in this conference. Day before yesterday, I was in Delhi, and again, that's another capital city. And we thought, let's put to vote all the contentious issues, and we go back to the stakeholders and ask them. And so we went back to diplomats, because they're part of the city, they're living in the city. We went to the poorest of the poor in the city, we went to everybody. One of the questions that was asked was, should we take the stray dogs away and put them into a dog sanctuary? And we'll put a Bluetooth collar onto them and manage them and so on and so forth. The reason why we should put a Bluetooth collar is because there's also a dog mafia that goes on. It takes the same dog, puts it into the sanctuary, takes it out, and then puts it back into the sanctuary and keeps charging money. So to put these systems actually on the ground, and when you roll up your sleeves, you will, all of us have gone through these. We know how people beat the system. So we used ICT. We said we'll put a Bluetooth chip on the dogs, take them to the sanctuary, count them, and take care of them. The other option is also to sterilize the dogs. And again, the same mafia goes on. It keeps sterilizing the same dog again and again. So Bluetooth becomes quite important. One of the senior politicians, who is an animal lover, went on a spree to respond to this question. And usually we get 2,000 responses out of the 600,000 SMS we send out. That day we got 60,000 responses because they were politically motivated. The point is that when you have a radically modified city administration, you're ripping apart the processes that have been put into place over years and years, possibly thousands of years. And when you rip them apart, because of technology, there are certain other dynamics that starts playing in, and we need to quickly learn those and put them back into the system and make sure the system doesn't get gamed up. But the point is, we should be reaching out to stakeholders and make it a more participative governance in the city. Similarly, we should have an outcome-based process in everything. Why are we buying ACs for this room? As a hoteling industry, the hoteling industry knows how to take care of guests. They don't know how to take care of ACs. The government doesn't know how to take care of ACs. There are specialized companies who know how to take care of ACs. Why can't we simply buy 24 degrees centigrade in this room? Let a third party provide it. They may put an AC, they may not put an AC. They may put thick glasses, they may put an installation, they may put something else that they will innovate on. All we need is an outcome. We need a road. We need traffic lights, right? Why are we buying the traffic lights? Why are we buying the ACs? Why are we buying these outputs? We need the outcomes. So can we move to an outcome-based solution in a city rather than output-based solution? Similarly, can we have service-oriented administration, informed governance? I'm just speeding up and because I have this slide in front of me and I'll complete it and I have a round of time, I guess. Personalized governance, participatory governance, smart cities, sensor-based administration. Can we know where pollution is happening? Can we put up a sensor which starts tweeting, I am very polluted at this place, right? And that is possible. And that's possible only when you need it. So you have to first define that, do you need it? Do people in Colombo, when they step out, do the mothers want to know that when the children are going to a school, is the school very polluted? Is the route very polluted? Can they find that information? Or are we just saying that it's polluted because somebody in the newspaper says so? Can we have fact-based administration? Can the citizens have access to that information? Can we take care of, I kept hearing about waste being a big issue, processing of waste. Can we convert the waste to gas? And those technologies exist. We can easily convert the waste to gas, and we're doing it in multiple places all over the world, including in South Asia. Connectivity is a big issue, ICT connectivity. Before we do anything else, that becomes a major issue. And I think Microsoft is championing using the TV white space for connectivity. I was doing the maths while I was coming down to Colombo. With 300 antennas and about $100 million, entire Sri Lanka can be connected using this technology. And these technologies, as of now, exist in South Asia. You don't need to buy it from anywhere else. These are at a fraction of a cost. You don't need to send a satellite up. It'll connect through to Wi-Fi to the last mile. Can we look into these technologies and the next generation of such technologies to democratize access to information and therefore democratize access to smart cities and smart nations? I'll stop with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Jayajit. It was very, very informative. Great presentation. I'm sorry, I think probably didn't have all you couldn't go through all the slides and points. Next is, coincidentally, you finished with Microsoft. I think the next speaker is actually from Microsoft. Mr. Vivek is the General Manager of APAC. Over to you for your presentation.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think Jayajit already done my presentation. I was here to talk about what technology can do. It's some of the scenarios that Jayajit pointed out is actually real. One example is we have one of our customers who is in the business of livestock management. And they use Internet of Things, sensors in the cattle. So every cow is chipped. So the farmer knows when the cow is ready for milking, when the cow is ready for feeding, what is the movement in terms of weight, growth, but more importantly, when the cow is in the heat. So, ladies and gentlemen, even giving birth to calves can be managed through technology optimally, right? So there are many, many, many examples of how technology can solve challenges. Technology doesn't solve challenges. That's not the only role of technology. Technology creates opportunities. It creates opportunities of economic growth. It creates opportunities for social inclusion. It creates opportunities for new ideas to take shape and shape the future of the world that we live in. The purpose of my speech here today is not to convince you that technology can do wonderful things. I'm pretty sure by now, all of you are convinced that technology can do a lot of things. Idea, imagination is a limitation. You're probably convinced that there are many other things that needs to be in place before technology can come in. And we heard about that in the last 2 days. The need for vision, the need for clear fact-based policy, the need for funding, the need for leadership, governance, and administration. Then, of course, technology makes it easier and de-risks and creates opportunities. What I'll talk to you about today is 3 essential ingredients that perhaps Colombo can look at whilst going about developing Colombo as a competitive city globally. The first one is the innovation mindset. This was brought about by a number of speakers in many different ways, and I cannot overemphasize the need for the innovation mindset. What is innovation mindset? It's creating an environment for exchange of ideas, for people to collaborate, to come up with maybe simple issues and simple problems. Creating an environment where fail fast, fail cheap, learn and replicate. The solutions can be locally done in Colombo, in Sri Lanka. It doesn't have to be imported. There is enough intellectual capacity, there is enough set of ideas, and there are enough challenges, as we have heard in the last 2 days, that Colombo can solve. Creating this innovation mindset is extremely important, not just for making it globally competitive, but also sustaining economic growth in the long term. Who does it well? Well, case in point, Singapore has been quoted in a number of examples, and this particular one, I think Singapore aces it. See on the slide, the Prime Minister of Singapore personally taking part in a hackathon event. That's the level of commitment in creating skills, in creating the youth of today to participate in problem solving through creative computing, through using coding, and participating in youth entrepreneurship programs that government sponsors along with the industry. The other example is what Auckland has done, Auckland City. Again, very similar to Singapore, they've brought together a bunch of local businesses, local entrepreneurs with a bunch of bright ideas and a lot of time on their hand to compute and create solutions to solve local problems, whether it's transportation, garbage management, providing visibility of what facilities and services are available for citizens using open data. So innovation mindset is absolutely key ingredient for making technology work. The second is people centricity. Why are we doing this? Of course, to improve lives, to achieve growth, to sustain, to have a life experience that perhaps is better than what our ancestors and our forefathers had before, leaving the world much better than what we found in. How do you do that? Technology has been guilty in the past of not putting people in the center of everything. It's not been the main primary focus. Technology has been the focus, unfortunately. Well, we have learned. UK government has made a very clear representation that how do government agencies, banks, financial institutions move away from designing systems, that's been the traditional approach, to designing services. They're very different things. Designing systems is, I'm responsible for my parking system. I'm responsible for my transportation system. As a user, as a person, as an individual, I don't care who delivers services from which department or which government agency. I want a service. I want to be able to walk into a post office. I want to do the banking transaction. I want to be able to find out my loan balances. I also want to renew my passport. Then, if I have time, I probably want to pay my utility bills as well. Or I can sit at home and do it through the internet. Or be in transit and use a mobile phone to do that. The choice of consuming services, whether it's from government sector or private sector, has to be the center of focus. I think as technology industry and people who are making policies have to really encourage this shift from designing systems all the way from policy to procurement to designing services. Goes back to the point that Jaijit made wonderfully, buying 24 degrees centigrade as a service. Why not? Second is from integration to collaboration, particularly when it comes to joined up government. A lot of time has been spent on trying to prove technology. We can integrate. Great. So what? Can you collaborate? Can you collaborate policy making? I think the speaker from UDA mentioned integrated planning. Integrated planning as a key achievement that needs to be in place for reimagining Colombo. How is it possible when agencies are disjointed, when events in one agency doesn't transfer real time to other? One person is digging on one side, the other agency is building roads on the other side, and then the other person digs third time. Brisbane City has come up with a solution, again through innovation mindset. They got the university guys to look at how do we solve this problem. They combine the data from utilities, the planning data from utilities. They combine the data from waterworks. Then they combine the data from public housing to look at the next 3-6 months schedule. So you have an ability to understand the dependencies of each agency's activities so you can prevent this development hacking type of mindset. And you save a lot of money, but more importantly, you enhance the quality of life for citizens using these services. Shiny new, and we are guilty as anybody else of promoting technology. Well, the world we live in, Colombo has got its own history. There's a lot of legacy, not just legacy buildings, not just culture, but also legacy information systems that you've invested in the past. How do you make sense of it and add on new things, the Internet of Things, cloud technology, mobile technology? It's about creating coexistence of the old and the new. Again, it's a mindset issue. Many agencies have taken it upon themselves to become data processing engines. The time has now come to provide data services. As cloud and mobile and everything else becomes pervasive, imagine delivering services through data rather than just providing data. That's where the real economic value add comes from. And Jayjit also talked about inputs and outcomes. Procurement reform has to be fundamental. The previous session talked about how to raise funds. Well, procurement reform in government is fundamental to enable private sector participation, risk sharing, as well as benefit sharing. And finally, I think technology industry has come a long way in moving away from automation and connecting the dots to enhancing the experience of users of services on a day-to-day basis. So people centricity has to be second most important ingredient. And third is trust. People will not use technology they don't trust. It's very simple. As technology becomes pervasive, I'm pretty sure you've got children at home. You're probably constantly worried, as I am, as a parent. What is the impact of technology when it comes to them? Their privacy. What are they sharing? What photographs are they accessing? What applications are they using? What happens to them in the future? There have been far too many sad stories ending up in suicides as a result of misuse of social media, abuse that happens to technology. Well, it's not just children. All of us are vulnerable. Businesses are vulnerable. Our IP is literally walking out of the door on a daily basis. Malwares, country-to-country cyber terrorism, state-owned actors. So trust in technology, whether it's IT systems or transportation systems or a planning system, has to be built in, not bolted on. And in order to do that, I think respecting core principles of what trust actually means is very important. Security of your data. As cloud becomes the default way of how we do compute, security of data, how it gets shared, how it gets transported is extremely important. Privacy is very, very important. You need to be able to control the data that you have, that you own, where it resides, who's got access to it. You can't have people running around the country, driving around, taking pictures of you and creating data. You cannot have a position where you're not buying products, you are the product that is being sold. That's a world that we could potentially move into. So we've got to resist from moving into that type of area. Compliance, having standards and protocols in place that are international in nature. And I would strongly encourage, again, when you're looking at reimagining Colombo, how do you integrate better with international standards? Not just from a security perspective, but planning, from development, and also from use of ICT. And finally, transparency. How do you bring together diverse stakeholders and create policy environment for developing the smart city? Creating a governance body that constitutes private sector, the academia, various government agencies, as well as NGOs and religious institutions. I think the minister yesterday talked about how the governance is being set up for the megapolis. Then we welcome that type of approach. So in closing, I think technology has a key role to play. It's a vision that shapes the technology. It is really putting people at the center of what we do and why we do that could make a big difference in making Colombo economically competitive, culturally superior, and from a lifestyle perspective, a great place to live. With that, thank you for your attention. I wish you well for imagining Colombo as a competitive city in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivek. Thank you for stating the importance of people when you're especially building around the cities and the technology as well. I also note that you may have a hard stop at about 5:30. So if there are any questions that you want to ask from Vivek, kindly send it earlier so that I can ask Vivek all the necessary questions. With that, we move into our last presenter, Ravi from Cisco Systems. Over to you, Ravi.
Good afternoon. And thanks my fellow presenters who have actually done a nice job of capturing a message on how technology can impact. And we also believe the same because we are also a technology people. And what we say is technology can drive and impact the way we work, we live, we play, we learn, or we do whatever. We definitely believe that technology is a game changer. It was supposed to be a catalyst for growth or enabler of businesses till now. Moving forward, and of course it's already started, technology is taking a front seat. And I go back to my friend from KPMG when he mentioned about, I have a technology, what do you do with that? Of course, we have gone through that era, but now we are coming to an era where you say, okay, tell me the challenge, tell me your problem, and I will tell you what technology can do for you. Let me take 2 examples, or maybe 3. I will not go through any presentation, though I have 4 slides, but I will not refer to that. Rather than take practical examples of how technology can change the way, what I said, work, play, live, everything. Let me take first example from the place I come from, India. And I'm sure these examples, these challenges are the same what we have in Colombo today or might be facing. First problem, we have a problem of reaching out to the right government machinery when needed. And one of the areas which have been a pain for all of us in this part of the world and especially in countries like India is reaching out to police department when you need it. It's a very common phenomena that if I lose my wallet on the road or a laptop from my car, I go to the police station to file a complaint, 99.9% chances it will not happen. Because the police stations are measured by the number of crimes reported. They don't want to report it. It's very common. For petty crimes, they will never even file a report. Only because people now tend to use social networking, Facebook, Twitter, put a lot of pressure, and then finally they agree to do it. But in a normal sense, for a common man, going to a police station and filing a report is always a tedious thing. So many people even don't go there because they know it's going to be a waste of time. So what we did with the police department in Karnataka, Bangalore, we did a simple experiment. We put a kiosk in a shopping mall. And on the kiosk, we put an application connected to the police control room. And we said, okay, anybody who wants to file a police complaint can walk into this kiosk, file a report. Very simple. 3 days later, once the kiosk was inaugurated and put in there, something happened which you could never think of happening in a normal circumstances. Somebody walked into the kiosk and filed a complaint against the police commissioner of Bangalore. And he got an acknowledgement of filing that complaint. And believe me, in a normal circumstances, you walk into a police station and say, I want to file a police complaint against your boss. Probable chances they will put you inside. True. This is what we call the power of technology making things easier for citizens. And that's what makes it smart. Smart doesn't mean that you have Wi-Fi on the road and I keep on using my mobile phone when I walk. No. Smart means use the power of technology to do things which solves your problem. That was example number 1. Let me go to example number 2. Again, a very simple method, no rocket science behind it. A simple youth in another city, in another country, where garbage is always a problem. And the thing is, if you see garbage across, you go to the local municipal officer, his first response, 99% will be, oh, I didn't know it. Nobody told me there's a garbage. I will send somebody. You go there after 24 hours, situation will be same. You again go back to the municipal officer, he'll say, oh yeah, I told my people to do it. Oh, they haven't done it, let me follow it up. It's a very common thing. So what happened, by using a simple power of smartphone, developed a small app. And this app is nothing but a photograph, which when you walk on the road, you see a garbage, you click a photograph using that app. What that app does, it clicks a photo, it maps that photo to the latitude and longitude, which is freely available through GPS. And that matches that with the database in the municipal corporation to see who is the concerned municipal officer of this area. And one message goes to him with photograph. The second copy of message goes to the municipal commissioner's office. The third copy goes to a public website. You go to the officer after 5 hours, he will never say, oh, I didn't know this. He cannot. There's a record. And the result of that in a small city, in a very small city, in a town actually, was that in 15 days, around 17,000 people downloaded that app. And another 15 days, you couldn't see a garbage on the road. In last 1 year, that one simple app has been downloaded 1.5 million times in all the cities across. Now, the beauty is you have a smartphone. Everybody has a phone. GPS is there, which is free, right? You have a connectivity. What you're going to do now is to use the power of whatever is in your hands, a tool, to go back and tell people, tell the government, tell the officers that, hey, you need to do this. And now they can't have that response of saying, I don't know it. Because transparency is something which technology brings about. So that's example number 2. And I'm sure all these examples are related everywhere. Colombo being one, or all of South Asian countries. And we have been working with governments in Malaysia, Vietnam, Philippines, Korea, for matter, using the power of technology to solve things. Another example, last one, security. Again, one of the other big problems in this part of the world. In countries like India, Malaysia, Philippines, well, we can't prevent crime. You can't have 2 million people on the road, policemen on the road preventing it, but you can use the power of technology. Unfortunately, there have been a lot of crimes reported, and now I think the time has come that we start again positioning technology to be more effective rather than positioning manpower. And let me tell you an example on this. Last year, there was a very big unfortunate incident in one city in India where a girl was raped by a cab driver, which I think everybody would have read. In fact, incidentally, that guy got sentenced yesterday, right, to death. Once this happened, most of the businesses, as usual happens, got a letter from the government saying, please take precautions, especially for women employees. And most of those businesses which work 24 hours a day, especially in Bangalore, the call center industry, the BPO industry, they started putting a lot of measures, and they contacted us because we are the network people that, okay, can I put a new network in place? I want to build a new security center or something like that. So I happened to meet one of the security chiefs of one of the BPOs during that time. And I told him that we can actually help you use technology to track your people for emergency situations. His response was, oh, we don't need that because we are smart enough to take precautions. So what is the precaution? The precaution is, we have made a rule that after 7 p.m., if a lady leaves office in a cab, which is office cab, she will never go alone. We will send a security guard along with her. So my response was, okay, that's great, but are you solving the problem or are you doubling the problem? You know, earlier she had problem with one guy in the cab, now she has 2. And that to a guy who's armed, who's a security guard. This is not the way. The question is, can I use, again, the power of smartphone, GPS, GPRS to track the cab in a way, what we call predictive analysis. Use the power of data to know if the cab is changing its route. If it is, take action. Take action. Precaution is always better. We have been hearing from ages. So this is what technology can do. So there are 5 implications what Cisco believes, and Cisco Consulting Research has come out with, which says there are 5 areas where technology can impact. Whether you talk of smart city, you talk of garbage, you talk of security. The number 1 is the data. There are a lot of data around, data coming from cameras, data coming from phones, data coming from people, cabs. Use the data, analyze the data in real time. Number 2, it has to be more than real time, because incidents don't tell you that I'm coming. You have to be prepared for that. Predictive analysis to stop the crime. Most of the time, CCTVs are used to post-mortem the crime, right? What happened? Who did it? Can I use the same CCTV to prevent a crime by using predictive analytics, video analytics? Yes. That is the power of data. That's the power of doing it more than real time. Mobility, power of mobile, power of smartphone, for reaching the government, for complaining, for raising issues, for making sure that you are secure everywhere. And last but not least, context. You can't treat every solution as same. A solution for a retail industry has to be different from solution for picking up garbage on the road. So context is the key. Now, coming back to Sri Lanka, I think this is the time, and I should thank organizers, Lakshman and team, for organizing this, because we have been working with, I have been personally coming to Sri Lanka for the last few years and meeting government officials, private companies who are now trying to do a lot of things here, a lot of things. And I really appreciate them to take this call now before things start happening, like what happened in countries like India or Malaysia or Philippines, before we do that. There are a lot of things happening in Sri Lanka as I speak. Our partners here are doing a lot of things to make Colombo more smarter, more better. I have one of my partners here, Adil from Millennium IT, who are also sponsoring this conference today. Adil, would you like to take 2-3 minutes? And I give my 2-3 minutes to him. Thank you very much.
Is it on? All right, I think we've heard from the experts, and I'm going to bring in some local context. I think given our speakers here, I think what we've realized is we as a city, we as a country, we need to place technology in the vanguards in our transformation efforts. Now, we've been talking a lot about the Internet of Things, of everything, but what you need to understand is this is not new technology, all right? This is not something that comes out of the blue. What it is a democratization of technology that permeates every aspect of life, business, government, individual, to enrich it in ways that were never before possible. Now, for us, technology has always been the easy part. What's most important is that we have the necessary security, policy, process, governance, and like Vivek mentioned, the mindset to cause technology transformations. When you came in here, you were given a card yesterday, all right? Now, this is an NFC card. LBO LBR intends to launch a variety of services using this card. But at any given time, any one of us would easily have half a dozen of these cards, right? Okay. Now, what if we could have a national citizens database, a central repository that could then be accessed by different organizations to provide loyalty, identity, and location-based services? All right. Now, technology here is not the impediment. What the impediment here is the mindset. Okay. Now, we at Millennium IT, what we've done is integrating this requires a platform. We've already built that platform. And using that platform, we've already deployed the first use case in NFC in the public transportation industry. Currently, our efforts are in onboarding more companies into this platform. And once we have this, hopefully, we could have a central repository that could then be accessed by this platform. Once that's done, that creates the potential of the possibility of having a single card. That could be your driver's license. That could be your entrance to the LBO LBR summits. That could be your loyalty card to your supermarkets and hotels. All right. Again, technology is not the impediment. It's the most easiest part in the equation. We need to create the necessary mindset that would accelerate technology adaptations. We all know that Wi-Fi is huge, right? The government has definitely taken a step in the right direction when it comes to Wi-Fi. It is important that we have this in our public places so that we could deliver the e-government, the e-tourist, the e-health, the e-education kind of services that our government hope to do. But if you look at the current public Wi-Fi hotspots that we've deployed, it's definitely initiative in the good direction, but it takes more time and hassle to log into one of these hotspots than it takes to create a fan page in Facebook. All right, you as a user, you as an individual, you should be able to onboard to a hotspot, regardless of which operator you belong to, whether you're a local or a tourist, seamlessly without manual intervention. All right, the access part should be easy, it should be seamless, and then we can talk about delivering our services. Again, technology is not the impediment, all right? It's more in terms of having the necessary regulatory frameworks that would enable our operators to coordinate with each other in providing such seamless access to infrastructure, okay? Now, video is going to be huge tomorrow. I think Ravindra spoke about, the kiosks that they had placed in the supermarkets, okay? This uses some kind of video technology so that, they could communicate back to the police station. It's going to take teachers to schools that could never otherwise have one, doctors to hospitals that could never otherwise afford one. But it's pretty amazing. You go into the boardrooms of Colombo today, all right? You, as the business community in Colombo, if you go into your boardrooms, how many of you have deployed video communications in a meaningful manner? Okay, this is something you could ask for yourself. And this is very simple technology. We've been deploying this for the last 5 years, but how many of you have embraced the technology and the culture that comes with it? If you do that, this could potentially change the way we do business, change the way we consume government services. It could change millions of citizen hours wasted in traffic. It could reduce traffic in our roads, all right? And these kind of technologies are indisposable. They're inevitable, all right? Inevitable in the cities of tomorrow, in the competitive cities of tomorrow. But the question remains, though, how soon as a city, as a nation, we want to get there. Okay, so at MIT, these are the kind of things we're working on, all right? These are not new technologies. This is simply the democratization of existing technologies with a huge impact, okay? And technology has always been the easy part in the equation, and that's very apparent, given the messages our experts are putting across. And it's exciting times, all right? And we look forward to it. We look forward to working with you in leapfrogging to where we want to be as a city, as a nation, as a country 5 years from now. Thank you.
So technology is not the impediment. It's also very interesting that 3 multinationals turns up and talk about so many beautiful, colorful technology stuff, which sometimes might be a little bit hard to grasp. But to decode all of that, we have ICTA. However, not just quite yet. We just have to thank the people who actually made it work, this session, LBR LBO Summit. Let's take a quick break and thank and appreciate the sponsors for making this happen. And we'll come back because there's a number of questions I need to ask from ICTA, the man in the middle.
We can innovate. And I think it's fair to say that policymakers and stakeholders are increasingly listening to what we can say or propose.
Global competition is so much more now, and it has to be aggressive and innovative and change fast in order to keep up.
Today our cities are changing, and so are the people who live in them. Our cities are growing, with residents that are smarter, more connected, and speaking out. Citizens that are demanding more from the place they call home, demanding improved service delivery and resource management, more sustainable urban growth, better safety, better health, better places to work and play. In a time when more than half of the world live in cities, city management must work harder than ever. That's why Microsoft City Next makes sense. Microsoft South Africa is teaming up with cities to provide industry-leading technologies and solutions that empower leaders and residents to shape their future, helping provide better online access to services and information, and to respond faster to everything from citizen requests to natural disasters. Scaling up service delivery, meeting evolving expectations, and finding new ways to control costs. Because by partnering with Microsoft, you can shape where your city goes next.
So we're back. Smart cities definition, I remember hearing about this about 8-9 years ago. Of course, I was used to be working for one of the companies who are here in this panel as well. And then it was a big topic then, and it seems to have evolved and still seems to be a big topic. And surprising thing is that a lot of multinationals who were not on the bandwagon now seems to be also on the bandwagon. And everyone has their smart city section going along. Now, the realities are Colombo is 2 million, 4 million, maybe a fluctuating population. So in comparison, not a large city by any means. So we do have set of aspirations. We actually do have inherited certain amount of traditional infrastructure in terms of technology, in terms of transportation systems, in terms of a lot of stuff. I don't know how different companies can really articulate an architecture for an entire city, but that's exactly the type of discussion we would like to have over the next 45 minutes. But coming back to ICTA, I think there was a question that I've raised. Let me just summarize that question as well. But before that, obviously ICTA is a much, much larger organization which has a much larger mandate. But would you like to summarize and say, in terms of developing a smart city blueprint for a city like Colombo, what is the type of a role that ICTA most likely could play? That's the first part of the question. The second part of it is actually, I'll read out the question here. Smart cities are built based on both geographical and cultural aspects too, on top of the technology part. So what direction from ICTA to build local industry on around smart technological offerings for sustainability? These are the two questions that I would like you to start off with.
Okay, let me just start by clarifying and also say that our mandate is not specifically only to Colombo. Though I come from Colombo and my heart is here, I think our mandate is right across the nation for the ICTA. I think one thing that I think we all agree is there's no smart city without smart people. Smart people are the crux of a smart city. And everything that the ICTA is actually heading for, and what we are doing is, I don't know how to say this, but I think in all the years of the ICTA, we are actually going to do more than 5 times of whatever we've done in the last, from 2003 onwards till now, in the next year. And the next 3 years, we are going to leap in terms of technology. So it's a huge challenge in terms of what we are going to do. Well, let's start with the basic things about people. It's proven fact that when with internet reach, when we reach people with internet, especially with broadband internet, a 10% growth means that there's a 2.5% GDP growth. It's actually proven. If you reach beyond to 10% of the population that doesn't have internet, there's a 1.3 GDP growth. It is a proven fact. So the ICT faced many challenges in terms of how are we going to start, how are we going to reach the people. And we approach a lot of people in terms of saying, can we partner to get these things done? The basic thing that we need to implement, obviously, is telecommunications infrastructure. How do we reach every single person? And how do we reach every single person with broadband capability? And that requires a huge leap. So when we approach the telcos, the challenge for them is, what is my ROI? If I've set up a tower here, what is going to be my ROI? Obviously, I'm not going to get the kind of traction I would get in an urban population. So we were challenged. So we took a multifaceted approach. The first one was, we looked at the technology that's out there, and we took a technology that was revolutionary, new, but a technology that would allow us pretty much instantaneously to reach all the population, and that was Google Loon. And essentially, Google Loon has been signed. The first balloons are already on the way for testing. Our target is by March, we will reach every single citizen in this country with Wi-Fi. However, there are limitations in that as well. We are aware of that. So we have a free Wi-Fi initiative, which is a public-private partnership, where we'll have about 2,000 sites deployed by end of next year. Again, we are reaching people. Third initiative, government to people. The government does not exist for any other reason except to serve its people. So how do we reach people and get people to reach back into government? So every single government building within the next 2 years, we will connect up with 100 Mbps fiber or 100 Mbps link with Wi-Fi transmitters around every single building. Anyone within proximity of 200 meters can access government services and can access education. And that includes schools, post offices. So we have multiple layers of information infrastructure, that is information communication infrastructure that we are putting in place. That's just one facet of it. The second one obviously is how do we get people to consume this? So there are multiple layers of, if I actually start talking, I can talk the whole day in terms of the number of projects, etc., that we have to do. But one thing that is very dear to the heart of the Sri Lankan is education. So the easiest way to reach people is education. So how can I deliver education content via the internet? That's a program that we already started with the Ministry of Education. And grades 1 to 10 in both Sinhala and Tamil content will be delivered in March with Google Loon. Right? And it will go beyond that into all facets of primary education and secondary education by next June. And all of these initiatives have actually been started. One citizen view, a lot of these initiatives have already been looked at, already started. The process of thinking has already started. How are we going to implement it? Because Sri Lanka is unique, whether you like it or not. We can't compare ourselves against Singapore or Korea or India or Estonia. We need to look at Sri Lanka as Sri Lankans. How do we implement? So we are actually studying all of these things. A lot of these things are already on the planning board. Some of them have already been conceptualized. And we are accelerating the process very, very fast. So we are not dependent on a specific MNC or any specific stakeholder. We are only driven by the mandate of the government that says, go deliver this. Because they said that they have to drive this economy towards a creative, knowledge-based economy in the next 3 years. And our mandate is to drive that. And therefore, we are driving digital infrastructure across all government, across all citizens in different areas. Again, as I said, I don't want to take up all the time because I can be presenting easily for half a day because of the amount of things that we are doing. But that's in a nutshell, especially on the communication side, which is vital, that we are doing.
Thank you, Arunesh. And I also wanted to say that we really appreciate coming in today. We know that Muhuntan was supposed to come and you actually had to switch with him and come over. So really appreciate making sure you're here and representing ICTA for us. So I'll go back to Professor Jayajit for a few questions. First of all, your presentation was very fascinating. I actually myself was very enthralled with some of the outcome-based work that you wanted to actually drive a city. Is this your first visit to Colombo?
No, it's not. I've been coming here for over a decade now.
Okay, that's fantastic. Because my question is, you have seen and you must have got some sense of how Colombo and the city looks like. Now, in your experience, you must have been to so many cities. You mentioned a couple of countries like China, India, etc., with your experience as well. Is this really doable for a city like Sri Lanka? I know the smaller it seems to be sounding to be better for us to build a more smart and connected city. If we are to build that, what are your recommended, because you're coming from an outside standpoint, what are your 3-4 steps that you think that we should ask people from Sri Lanka should do to build a great city in Colombo?
The first point is that do you want to be the world's best smart city has got many definitions to be first put into place. What does world's best city mean? What does smart city mean? And so on. So I'll not get into the academics of that. If the clear question is that here is a region called Colombo, and how do we smartify Colombo in the larger sense that we understand without going to the definitions of what is smart? Clearly, connectivity to everybody becomes one of the first issues. The second is that it's virtually impossible for just a small set of administrators to decide what the city should look like, how it will evolve, and so on. Therefore, the next infrastructure that needs to be put into place is the governance infrastructure, which will enable the administration to reach out to the people and get their views in from every segment of the population, be it traders, be it the poor people, be it the rich people, be it outsiders, diplomats, investors, and so on and so forth, and see what's stopping them. And then take a decisive call in terms of what is the input that Colombo would like to take. And there will be conflicts. To give you an example from another capital city, New Delhi, and I'll take that example because that's a capital city, I'm helping them out in smartifying, is that the entire city wants a central part of the city to be pedestrianized, which is called Connaught Place, and the inner circle to be pedestrianized, and it will make the city look very fanciful and romantic, like the Italian city that was shown last evening. But the small, tiny population of 0.5% traders over there are saying you will destroy our livelihood. Now, should we go with the tyranny of the majority, or should we go and do what is right for a little minority that is sitting there? And I think those are trade-offs that one has to take. Once the smart decisions are being taken, and exactly what the gentleman from ICT is saying is, you need to have smart people to make the city smart. So once these smart decisions are taken, automatically the rest of the jigsaw puzzle falls into place. So what kind of transportation is needed, what kind of housing is needed, what kind of technology is needed, starts falling into place from that perspective onwards. If you look at, one of the things that was being asked to the gentleman from Sweden yesterday, last evening, I was observing, was when did the metro start happening in Sweden? And he was going to answer the whole thing, but unfortunately it got cut off. The metro was not just to enable transportation, it was to help Sweden survive a nuclear attack. So the entire metro is at such a depth that the nuclear radiation will not penetrate. So it doubled up as a place where people could go on and survive, which is why extra money was spent on it. It is not at a normal depth. It's at a much larger depth. Now, Colombo doesn't need that. And therefore, what is it that you would need first needs to be defined, and that becomes a parameter for Colombo's smartification than the aspiration of being the world's most smart city. Because the world's most smart city will be what Colombo wants itself to be. The other little part I just want to add is even the concept of Colombo. Because what's really happening globally, and especially in the Asian part of the world, is that even rural areas are having all access and all facilities that urban areas have. And therefore, the concept of urbanization is not just that urban locations are becoming more and more, are having migrations into it, but the rural locations are becoming more urbanized and getting access to all the facilities. And I think that's something that one would like to scale up to. And what ICTA is mentioning in terms of providing the connectivity would significantly help in that process also that's going on.
Thank you, Professor Jayajit. Fantastic response. So Vivek, I'll come to you. There's a question from on our SMS number. It's 07146600060. If you wanted to continue to send your questions through. The first one they've asked is, I'll just read out the question from the audience first. Vivek, is there an example of projects of paper systems for monorail, MET, MET, and IRT, and which elements affect efficiency? Now, the reason why this is coming in is that we are now discussing or hearing a lot about monorail in Colombo as well. And I think if you can expand this question a bit more and speak a little bit about that part of it, and then answer the question. I have another question lined up for you.
Thank you for the question. I think transportation clearly is a major issue, as was evidenced in the last deliberations of 24 hours. Public transportation continues to be a key issue, not only in terms of design, planning, but also financing. Who pays for it? It's very expensive. We had this wonderful debate earlier on the stage about rail versus road religion, right? So, but there are many innovative examples of how transportation systems, particularly technology associated with the transportation systems, can play a role in alleviating financial risk. One such example, in fact, a couple of examples. One is in Transport for London. They've been using Oyster Card for such a long time. Now they've gone beyond Oyster Card. Now it's a contactless payment. Now what this does is people with credit cards, people with debit cards, they're now able to swipe and use the transport, which makes it very easy, which makes it very lively. But that's not the point. The point is, in the process of doing that, the richness of data that gets collected, the richness of experience that gets collected is spawning new enterprises, new sub-enterprises within the transport sector. That kind of funds future initiatives, railroad or track expansion, maintenance work. The funding mechanism becomes self-funding in its own nature. Similar examples in Canada, where they've used mobile application technology and the context of users and passengers to provide real-time passenger information system. That's great. But what they also do in that context is to provide advertising and context-based advertising and promotions. So passengers can, on the way, go to the retail store, get hold of the discount that's available, get hold of a coffee, do some banking transaction. So they not only minimize the waiting time and the experience of transportation, but also creates economic opportunity for the transport provider so they can subsidize their funding in terms of how they provide transport on a BOT basis in Canada. There are many such examples that are coming up which are pay for itself model.
Fantastic. Actually, my question was to tie it back to the funding part as well. So I think you addressed it for briefly. So I'll come back to you with another question. But Ravi, in preparation for this discussion, by the way, I'm seeing some very interesting questions about representation, unfairness, etc. I agree. I completely agree. I think people have mentioned about representation from females into this panel. I'm fully supportive of that. It's all Lakshman's fault. So coming back to the point, I was in preparation for this panel discussion, Ravi, I was reading and quite a lot of stuff. There's a very interesting repository in your corporate site about smart cities, but they speak a lot about IoT a lot. Now, I know IoT, Internet of Things, all of us have a very interesting and probably a very good idea about it. But would you mind, first of all, just breaking down that a bit and say that? I know that you, Vivek, and Professor Jajit also will have some opinion around it. We'll come back to that. But IoT, and why is this IoT going to be a very critical thing for building smarter, intelligent technology and platforms and etc. Just cover that basic foundation and we probably can build up on that.
Yeah, so thanks for reminding this. Maybe I could have spoken about it. So basically the whole idea of smart cities today or smart countries today, what we talk about is interconnecting systems together. And that's where the IoT comes in. The IoT, Internet of Things, actually started by connecting devices so devices can talk to each other. Now, what we have done, we have actually taken it one step ahead. And I think somebody mentioned on the forum, you mentioned about people being smart. We tend to think that if you have devices connect to each other, there's a data flow between them. Until you do something with that information, smartness cannot be achieved. So what we said is, you have devices talk to each other, that's Internet of Things. You also apply the human side of it, the people side of it to it, so that people can use that. And the process of it, so that you know how to use that information. So things, people, process. If taken together, we call it Internet of Everything. So everything inclusive of the devices, the data, the process, the information, what goes beyond. That's where it's leading to. And then when it comes to smart cities or making things easier by applying technology, one thing which I already mentioned is use the information which happens to fly this. For example, an ambulance going on the road. It's a very common problem in these in developing countries. Ambulance going on the road gets stuck in a traffic jam. And this is a situation which you cannot do much. You know, and I've heard and read, seen news where people have actually died because of this. Or very recently it happened in a country in Asia where a woman had to unfortunately give birth to a child in a moving car because they couldn't reach hospital on time. Can I simply use the power of data which comes from traffic signal, traffic management, the things going in the city, the rallies, political processions or whatever, and then the ambulance driver getting an alert before he hits the traffic jam saying, please don't take this road, take an alternate road. And it's very easy. There's no rocket science behind it. It is just that you need to use the information coming out of 3 or 4 different systems together, and then sending that information before time. Before time means before I hit the traffic jam, I should get the information. Also, I should get an alternate route to reach the hospital. If we are able to do this, that's true smartness. So the power of connecting devices, that's where IoT comes in. Power of connecting people and process, that's where IoE comes in. And then applying it back to people so that you can save lives. That is actually what creates a smart infrastructure.
Thanks, Ravi. I think this is IoT is such a broad area, and I think oftentimes we use this term probably thinking that everybody gets it. So I really appreciate breaking it down. I hope if there is, I see a lot of questions coming through for ICTA. We'll take it that a bit later, but I want to move the conversation a little bit to another direction. Professor Jayajit, I'd like to hear, we spoke about transportation a lot. Another area that I think we haven't really, in my personal opinion, that we haven't really got everything figured out, or most of it not figured out, is the energy sector. We are a 20 million population. It's not very big as a country, but smart cities obviously mean the consumptions can move into very different directions. Can you talk a little bit about the energy part of it and how those kind of that kind of industry need to evolve, and also operating models that is required in terms of changes that is required to support smart cities and connected, especially from the energy standpoint?
Let me throw a little statistics to show the extent of the problem that you just mentioned. In India, because I have the Indian statistics, last year 16 million PCs were sold, PCs and laptops. Each of them consume roughly about 200 watts of electricity. And that comes to about 3.2 gigawatts of electricity being consumed only by PCs and laptops, only the ones which are sold last year. How much is 3.2 gigawatts? That's 6 large nuclear power plants. So you have to set up 6 large nuclear power plants if these 16 million PCs and laptops are working 24 hours a day. Fortunately, they don't work 24 hours a day, and therefore that's another issue which I'll not touch upon. Essentially, we're buying these laptops and 3 years later we are dumping them, causing e-waste, which should be a problem in a separate question that you may ask. But coming back to the energy issue, if you're consuming IT in such a large fashion, and it's only IT which is leading to the enormous amount of energy consumption, then the other aspects, which is your energy in terms of gas, energy in terms of petroleum, in terms of diesel, in terms of your piped natural gas. So the entire energy envelope will be blowing up as we move forward, especially also because there'll be a larger and larger amount of automation happening. Given that situation, it's extremely important to have what the popular term is a sustainable city, which essentially means that the energy produced, that the energy consumed in a city, much of it should be actually be produced in the city itself, so that it becomes energy neutral. Now, what are the ways of producing energy in the city? Solar obviously is one of the ways, and if you go down the street, you will see there's a solar energy firm, and that's selling solar panels. There are multiple kinds of solar energy. There is always, and obviously the photovoltaic one, and then there are mechanisms by which you take the heat and you convert the heat, the water into heat, and you use the steam to generate energy. The point is that when you're designing a city and you're keeping the energy sources in mind, and solar being one, then even the orientation of the city and the orientation of the buildings needs to be computed upfront and to be defined upfront before you start even putting down the panels. The way you ensure that the wind flow happens through the city so that the energy consumption is reduced because you're taking the heat away, again becomes a part of how you design a city which consumes less energy. Instead of creating energy heats within the city, which leads to a higher amount of electric consumption for AC, can we use more green spaces? Instead of putting concretes on the road, can we have grass patches in between? Those also become part of your solution. Then I heard about the waste problem yesterday, and I was talking about it in my little talk again. Can we convert the gas, the waste, into energy? And one way of doing that is converting it into gas. Another way of doing it is converting into energy, into electricity. The latter involves incineration, which will lead to smoke happening, and therefore it's polluting and leads to other issues. The former is much more cleaner way of converting the waste into energy. Can we look at other forms of energy? Can we have tidal energy being harnessed? In Sri Lanka, being an island, has got enormous access to tidal energy. How much of it is being accessed? Given the terrain of Sri Lanka, there's enormous amount of energy in terms of wind power. I'm not sure how much of it is really being accessed within Sri Lanka. Can we have a combination of wind and tidal and waste to energy and solar as alternate mechanisms within a city to generate the energy needed? And most importantly, for all of that to really happen, what is a regulatory mechanism? In fact, regulatory mechanism, if I may be allowed to digress a little bit, is an overarching theme that gets missed out in many cities. Even the issues that was talked about in terms of IoE, in terms of driverless cars, drones, and so on and so forth, trust me, none of it will happen unless we have the regulatory mechanism in place. Imagine having a 3D printer where somebody sends you the design, you print out the product at home, who pays the taxes? The designer hasn't paid the taxes, you manufactured it, you're not paying the excise duty or any of the taxes, the government starts to lose. If you are buying a driverless car and the car goes and hits somebody, who owns the liability? Is it Google? Is it you? Is it the car? Is it the person who got hit? In each of these issues, those regulatory frameworks has to be put into place to enable the innovation to take forward. And none of these innovations will happen unless you have a supporting innovative structure. Look at Uber. Uber would not have flourished and become such a large behemoth if in its home country it did not have the regulatory support. It went through hell in most other countries, and many of the regulatory processes had to be changed. But in its home country, it could grow because the home country provided the regulatory support, and that's what we need to do over here also.
So, Professor, thank you so much. But I'm not. I mean, obviously, unfortunately, due to the time limitations, would have loved to get into more details about tidal and solar and wind. I mean, those sounds very nice on when we talk about it as alternative, but are they really effective, and can they really be harnessed for the demands of the modern era is a question I'm not convinced about. But that's a separate. It's definitely a conversation we can have after today. But more importantly, something again, a Pandora box I'm hoping to open with Vivek: privacy. All this technology, all this IoT, all of this, every time Millennium IT presentation covering all of our information, NFC, people knowing I am here right now. What do you think? What is that impact for an average person?
It's a significant issue on many levels. Privacy is something that absolutely going to be important for all of us as we move forward in adopting technology. As devices get connected, as we get connected, as we leverage and share more and more information to get the services, privacy has to be extremely center of the policy making when it comes to adopting technology. Whether you're sending balloons up the air or whether you're using TV white space, how you're collecting data, what you do with it, where do you store it, who owns it, who's got access to it. It's extremely important. And the reason is not just because we're all very precious and mindful, it's the IP of the nation. It's intellectual property at stake. It's ideas, it's businesses, it's our assets that could potentially get exposed and become vulnerable. Your competitors could steal your data within the country. Your competitors outside the country could steal the data. Country to country, cyber terrorism happens. So security and privacy has to be the cornerstone of policy making going forward.
So where should they come in? If we are to build a more technology-enabled city, I'm not even going far as saying smart city and all that. Where should it come in, and how should it start? Who should own it or building it? I mean, what have you seen in other implementations of this?
So there are very good international practices that's been put in place to uphold the importance of security and privacy. It starts with the policy making agency. And I think ICTA has got a very key role to play this. This is not just ICTA's responsibility alone. It's equally the industry's responsibility as well. As technology partners, we owe it to our people, to our customers, to our citizens who use the technology to build it into the way we deliver things. And thirdly, it's also the civil society that needs to raise these issues, make people aware of these issues, and ensure that people make choices, informed choices. Whether they want to use a particular service where their entire data, the family history and biology gets exposed, that's fine. If that's what people want to do, they have the freedom to choose it, but it's on basis of informed, consent-based approach. It's everyone's responsibility, but I think ICTA needs to take responsibility for setting standards, aligning with international standards, and making sure technology providers are staying compliant as far as Sri Lanka is concerned.
So Vivek, because I know you have a hard stop at 20, Arunesh, I'll come back to you because I have lots of questions for you. But where does you speak about privacy and etc. Technology always leaps and bounds ahead. Regulatory, the government, all of us are trying, always doing catch up. So how can you expect someone behind to set policy framework for a technology that is ahead of its time or which is so kind of advanced? I mean, wouldn't the policymakers wouldn't be able to understand even to create because ultimately it has to be still support innovation as per Professor Jayajit said. How would that work?
There is an issue, and I think an example is the NIST process in the United States. What they did is, in coming up with the revised risk assessment framework, they did a 12-month consultative exercise, bringing in the industry players and making it an open, transparent, tripartite policy development. So policy doesn't have to be done within the confines of ICTA, right? Policy can be defined jointly with players who are on the know of what we're doing. Our research organizations can put a roadmap in terms of what technology is coming around the corner, the implications of such technology, and the impact of that technology in the current risk and security and privacy framework. So to me, the question is, it's a mindset again. How do policymakers, decision makers, embrace technology providers into the wing and develop joint policy? So policy cannot be done in isolation. That's been the issue so far.
Right, thanks, Vivek. Arunesh, let me come to you. There are a number of questions come in. But before that, I got a very funny SMS. Someone said the previous session was about collecting money, and this session is about spending money. So if in case you don't know how to summarize this panel discussion, we are all telling about how to spend all that money you collected from the previous session for build smart cities. ICTA. We saw the frustration on how difficult to do right things in transportation development session. Is there any policy, which is one of the sessions before, by the way, is there any policy or direction to overcome such means, execute good thing that we can do with local expertise with lower capex and opex? I don't know whether that is possible with lower capex and opex, but you get the gist of it. What say you?
Okay, so I think we have already started discussions with the Minister of Transport on a lot of these areas as well. Our approach is again very strongly on ROI to the citizens. How do we actually first make it work? I think the transport card is a challenge in itself. For example, I think the initial pilot was done on the 138 route. The 138 route is the most densely populated route of them all. And that's a very difficult route to start with because obviously you have people coming with cards, some people coming without cards. We have a conductor, where in Singapore you don't have a conductor. So we need to understand how the Sri Lankan process will work and how we can effectively deploy it in a Sri Lankan process or in a Sri Lankan culture. So currently we are actually doing a study with the National Transport Commission to see whether we can run a pilot to understand exactly what would work and how we can do a private-public partnership where the public doesn't have to spend a lot, but there will be a partnership across every single aspect of the transport card, or the printing of it, of the middleware for it, for the clearance engine that does the clearance of the transaction, all of it, in each one in a different silo if we need to, so that we can come up with the most effective and also the most cost-effective method of deploying it.
I'm not sure. Yeah. So another one question, I'll just get a few questions quickly out of the way. There are some questions that I've asked very specifically about like NFC, etc. I think probably we can ask much more broader questions than that from the experts here, especially in terms of IT policy making. Who spearheads it for initiatives like building a smart city, for example, or even for the entire country? Or are there other government entities who are in it? I mean, how does that work is a question that have been raised.
Right, so the ICTA is the apex policy-making body for ICT in the government. So our mandate is to drive all ICT policy. However, we don't drive policy in isolation. We drive policy with specific stakeholders relevant to vertical ministries that cover specific areas. So what we do is that we if a specific, for example, a ministry needs technology to come in, then they consult us and we together work on both the technology and the policy behind it. And something that is new to ICT is something called the Interministerial Committee, which facilitates policy making, where we have 8 of the most powerful ministers sitting in the Interministerial Committee with 4 secretaries who are able to drive policy across the whole of government very, very easily. One of the challenges I think you would already know is in the past, we were a single ministry, and driving a single ministry's policy across multiple government organizations is always a challenge. So we have the Minister of Finance, Minister of Foreign Affairs sitting in the Interministerial Committee. And once policy is defined, it's far easier for us to drive it across government. But it's always a consultative process. But the mandate of defining ICT policy is on ICTA.
Right. So Ravi, coming back for you, a question about operating models. So if Colombo wants to develop kind of a blueprint, there is a model that Colombo operates right now. Will there be in terms of different sectors, etc.? So the question I wanted to ask you is that have you seen any changes, key changes in the terms of operating model in cities that have taken this journey to be more technologically enabled?
Yeah, absolutely. So operating model and along with it, a business model, because nothing works better until you know what is the business outcome of it. It's very specific to the local topography and the local requirement. I will not say that a business model or operating model of a smart city in Barcelona will be same as we do in Colombo or New Delhi, for example. It has to be different, but the basic premise is same. And the basic premise is this. When we try to tell people that you use technology to create things better, make it smart, we also have a moral responsibility of making sure that whatever cost goes into it, the benefits have to weigh down. Because ultimately, we are not here for the sake of selling technology just to make sure that there is technology. Now, let's take an example of connectivity, Wi-Fi. Every government is coming forward and saying, I'll provide Wi-Fi to every citizen. Great. There's money in it. Money has to be spent on it. But until you tie that with an outcome, it will never be successful. There have been examples where cities have done Wi-Fi and after 3 years, it's gone because no maintenance, nobody. So ultimately, the models of operating models which we have seen and we have worked with customers like in Malaysia, Iskandar, for example. The model is you create the base infrastructure. The government creates only the base infrastructure and then brings in private players to offer services on top of that. So what happens now, the private player doesn't need to spend money for base infrastructure. At the same time, government doesn't have to worry about offering end-to-end solution because ultimately government will have no budget for that. And in both of this, there are new economic models which come in, revenue generation streams, which everybody, the citizen, the provider, and the government gets somewhere benefited by that. So in summary, yes, operating model is important, it's critical, but it cannot be one size fit all. And companies like KPMG, Pricewaterhouse, Cisco, Microsoft, we have been working with customers, I know, to help them create those kind of models and then tie that back with a business outcome. And that's what's required for Colombo as well.
Thanks, Ravi. I think we'll do the last few questions. If I do get any other questions from SMS, I'll definitely read it out. Professor Jayajit, I wanted to ask you this question, but I'll come to Arunesh also after that for the same question. Professor Jayajit, there's been a couple of questions raised about education related. The reason why I'm asking is that you must have seen this across so many other countries where the native language is different from English and internet is predominantly a English medium in terms of content consumption. And how has other countries tackled that situation where we need that access to information, and usually information should translate to knowledge and expertise and interest and passions and innovation, etc. So how do you think that other countries where the native language is not English have tackled that in terms of really developing education especially for the younger generations?
Yeah, but let me sharpen that question. It's not just other countries with script which is not like the Roman script. The answer is evolving. There is no answer. The challenge is that even if it's a chicken and egg problem. Even if you make the content available, the uptake is not there too much. and therefore the business models don't exist for this content. So somebody who's putting up a content on the net has a business model either in terms of a monetary business model or in terms of sheer impact it's creating. Now, if the number of people who are looking at the content is very limited, because typically, and especially in the South Asian part of the world, those who don't know English also are economically worse off and therefore also do not have access to all the devices that we're talking about. Now, that trend is changing as we speak. The ubiquity of smartphones is changing this trend, and therefore more and more people are getting access. And therefore you will see that even the keyboard systems are evolving for the local scripts have become better and better. If you're using Sinhala keyboards, you will see that it's much easier to use it now than what it was even a year ago. And that's true with all the other local scripts that we have. It'll be a process of evolution where technology will support, and therefore business models will fall into place. Once that happens, you will have local content in education also coming up. And I was looking at the question of why not put everybody onto Khan Academy? Short of also commenting on the education system itself, because what we did in New Delhi, and again I'm taking example of New Delhi because that's a capital city, is when we reached out to the poorest in that city who were staying in illegal squatter camps, and we asked them, what is your biggest issue? And we said health, and we said financing, jobs, good water, sanitation, and all of them were problems. But the topmost problem they came back and said was education, which kind of opened our eyes, because if you had not spoken to them, you would have still been trying to supply them water and sanitation and so on and so forth, which they have enough of over there because it's in the capital city. And therefore education has become a huge requirement, and it's not just any education, it is English education. They're not saying that please teach our children in the local language, because they know that that's not going to help them get out of the poverty that they are still in. And therefore, linking education to local language may not be the choice of the target stakeholders, but the initial problem statement of having content in local language will evolve as you speak. It's not something that can be pushed through unilateral measures. It will evolve as technology evolves and as the society evolves.
Thank you, Professor Jayajit. You had a quick point to make.
Yeah, just to say that, again, technology can be part of the solution. Khan Academy is one good example of MOOC. But importantly, from a language perspective, technology is breaking down language barriers. Microsoft and the research organizations have been doing this work for a long time. If you look at Skype as a product, that translates. It's got now the translation ability to translate into almost every language. And the translation ability is now at 95, 96% real time. So you can teach, a person in England can teach schools in rural Sri Lanka, teach in English, gets translated in Sinhalese. So the technology is there today. So it's positive, it's exciting. The second thing is non-English speaking countries around the world, particularly in Latin America and Africa, they're all thriving centers of education. So to me, I would say, yes, English education is important, but it can be delivered in multiple ways now.
Great, great point. I have a question from you, for you, Arunesh, about the top question about smart cities. Do we have right technological team selected, speciality on information technology, to drive vision around that? What do you think?
I think we do. Otherwise, I won't be here, but otherwise, I'm letting myself down as well. I think we do. I think a lot of changes in the ICT, I think you would have seen. We're not looking at smart cities, we're looking at smart people. So a lot of the things that we're driving are very innovative. We are driving a lot of things left or center because a lot of people are wondering how we are driving some of these things. But it's got to be driven, otherwise we cannot make that leap that Sri Lanka needs to make to become the nation that it actually should be. So I think we have a very, very good team. The existing project management team are very innovative in the way that they approach a problem and drive a problem. I think you know more about the CEO than anybody else because you can see him working. He's a serial entrepreneur by nature, and for him, obstacles are breakfast for him because he enjoys facing obstacles and overcoming them. And he's the most innovative person in government that I've seen in terms of changing things and transforming things. So next year is going to be a hectic year for all of us. And as I say, I'm in charge of executing a lot of these things. If I don't execute, I get executed. So, yes, I believe so. We are expanding too, and we're looking for a lot more smarter people as well.
So where can I find out all that work you're doing? If I want to find out what is ICTA doing for next year, where can I find that?
So currently we are in the process of rebuilding our website. I hope within the next 3 to 4 weeks, the new website will come in. That's going to describe in detail what we are going to be driving as initiatives and what we've done in the past as well. A lot of the initiatives are still awaiting final budget approval, but I'm very confident that we have most of it in place. But that would actually be the single place that you can get all the information because we want to develop a world-class website, which is what we're doing, which would provide citizens as a single contact point for all information. I just want to take one more question on the education part. I believe we are a multilingual society in Sri Lanka, even though English is not taught maybe with the quality that is desired at every single place. It is taught. We don't want to focus on English per se because English content is freely available. But there are many, many people in the rural areas that only do Tamil and Sinhala. So we need to deliver content. But we know that once technology is utilized by citizens, then learning English is just one step away because they know how to use technology. And there's enough content in English available on the internet to teach. So a lot of the initiatives that we also will do is we will start driving some of these learning technologies, especially language learning technologies, through Ministry of Education. We are not only going to possibly use a Ministry of Education, we are going to have it very broad-based. We are also going to use other stakeholders like Khan Academy. Khan Academy, I believe, has already given about 700 training videos to the Ministry of Education to deploy. So all of that is being done, but again, very focused on smart citizens.
Thank you, Arunesh. So I think with that, we could wrap up the last session of LBR LBO forum. Over to you, Lakshman.
Okay, before I thank our sponsors, the partners, and our speakers of the final panel, I would like to share a few things with you. If you haven't got your NFC card still, that card you can collect from the check-in counter, because we will be built in many services, and this card will be your access card for future LBR LBO events as well. So please do. All the presentations, some of you actually spoke to me even about a couple of hours ago. Couldn't find the presentations online. Go to www.lbo.lk/summit. When you go down, you will see a tab for presentations. So we will send a specific link to the presentation tomorrow or day after. So if those who are not being able to find the presentations, you should be able to. Then the questions, these questions we received today and yesterday are some of the most intelligent, challenging, stimulating questions. And that shows the enthusiasm and interest of the audience to engage. But unfortunately, we don't have time to take all those questions. So we have our IT team over there, Nuan. He is going to collect those questions. He has already collected those information in our database questions, and we will try to direct those questions to relevant resource personnel, and hopefully we will get some responses, provided they have sufficient time to respond to these emails, and then we will post them on the website, again, Summit website, so we can continue this dialogue. Also, there's a lot more we will be adding to the resources section of the website. So keep visiting that. And also, if you would like to share with other, if you would like to post, if you'd like to share anything interesting and relevant you have found, please forward it to summit@lbo.lk. You know the email address, and we will be very, very happy to post this related content to the share the related content. One small thing, there was a comment about the inclusivity. I thought that I should clarify our policy. I know there are some women who take all men panel photographs of our events and post them in various websites with various sarcastic remarks. I would like to make one thing very, very clear. We are not an anti-women company. Some of you are aware, 15 years ago when we formed LBO, our founding editor was a woman whose death I still mourn, unfortunate death. And we had groomed and promoted women to board level. And we haven't had any kind of prejudice against women. But let me be very, very clear about one thing. When we put together a panel, there's only one objective we have in our mind, that we put together the best possible expertise to give the audience the best possible summit experience. And if the best people we can find happen to be men, we can't help it. Because we don't look at the world through a gender lens. Because we are duty bound by you, also the organization pay for your attendance to give you the best experience. So that is our aim. So if the ICT agency boss and the ICT agency chief of project happen to be men, I'm sorry, I can't help it. Oh, chairman is a woman, okay? All right, so I just want to get that out of the way. Okay, there's no question about where we not being inclusive. We are an inclusive company. We have nurtured that inclusivity and the gender, making decisions which are gender neutral for 15 long years. And we are one of those companies who fight for lesbian rights in this country. Okay. And I have been, termed as gay banda and gay TV, etc. for all that, I'm very happy about it. Okay, so finally, there are many people I have to thank, starting from our sponsors. Okay, we have a whole lot of partners, and Cinnamon Life, Hitachi, HSBC, Microsoft, and Millennium Technologies, Millennium IT, for contributing financially as well as in terms of their resources, and also suggesting a lot of great ideas. Last few months, I had the great privilege of working with great women like Reena from Microsoft, and wonderful team from MIT, and HSBC, it's friends from HSBC, etc. So they get involved in the content. We discuss the content. So the content, I should not, or LBO is not taking the full credit. All credit goes to our partners as well. That's a wonderful experience working with these beautiful people in our partner organizations. And we also had this great support coming from a whole lot of national partners, starting from University of Nagatur. Professor Anand Javadan was here last evening. Unfortunately, today, whole day, he was in the council meeting. He said otherwise he should have definitely attended the whole day. And Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, unfortunately, Mangal couldn't join the panel today because he's in Disposal. And Urban Development Authority, town planners as Institute of Town Planners, Colombo Stock Exchange. Oh, I didn't realize that we have two stock exchanges, Colombo Stock Exchange and also London Stock of Exchange, as Exchange of London's, Stock Exchange through MIT, ICDA, Institute of Engineers, and JICA. Thank you, Namal. KPMG, Riaz Mula supported us, and they sponsored the visit of Dr. Bhattacharya. And the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, Namali, thank you. And Adfactor, our PR partner, Oxford Business Group, our research partner, and our print partner, and of course, Sri Lankan Airlines. And I also should mention, I have mentioned that earlier, Holcim, 3M, and Access Engineering have come forward to sponsor 20 participants from University of Mogador, faculty as well as undergraduates. So it's a wonderful experience working with such a large number of agencies. what is beautiful about is some of these agencies are government agencies, and some are professional bodies, and some are private companies, universities. So that is exactly what we wanted to create. We want to create that dialogue. We want to create that discourse. We want to create that conversation, a multi-stakeholder conversation about how to move this city forward. And it's a wonderful experience to have all of you here, and coming here today 8:45 in the morning and sitting through all the sessions and enthusiastically taking part by sharing your views and posting those comments. So we are a media company. Our job is to create platform. Our job is to create create the content, relevant content. And what we intend to do is create multiple reports based on the content we generated, one aimed at policy level, the other one at operational level, and the third one for mass public consumption. It will take few months, few weeks, but we will put up them in terms of digital papers. We don't believe in printing because we are 100% digital company. We don't like to waste paper. But I believe that some of the government departments and ministers, etc., unfortunately, they have the digital age hasn't reached. I'm sure that organization, them are working very hard towards that. So we will try to see how we can continue the conversation, at least how we can create positive impact on policy making, okay, through the wonderful content that our speakers dedicated their time and created. So thank you so much for all the sponsors, and national partners, and a big thank you to all of you. Okay, taking time off your work, taking time off your family and social activities, and spending time since last evening and engaging in this. And it's really encouraging to see that house full of hall full of enthusiastic people. And there are people from, as I said, 90 organizations, varying from this, government agencies, UDA, RDA, Central Environmental Authority, and various other government organizations, universities, students, thank you, etc. And it's a wonderful experience to have all of you and host this conference for you. This is your conference as much as LBO's conference, and it's a conference of the our resource personnel. So finally, a big thank you to Jajit. Thanks so much joining us. And Jajit has been, in communication with us almost last few weeks. So was Ravi, and Vivek is not here. And it has given personally a great privilege to work with you guys. And thank you so much, Rohan, skillfully, moderating one more session. And I will assure you this will not be the last, because we are very good at, exploiting other people's sincerity and generosity. We do that shamelessly. Thank you so much, Arunesh, joining us today, and seeing you after 15 years. Okay, wonderful. So now, ladies and gentlemen, next is my privilege to invite you to the most look forward to event, cocktails. Enjoy your evening. Put together your hands and thank our sponsors.
LBR LBO Infrastructure Summit 2015, making Colombo a globally competitive city. Sponsors: